There is something controlling your life right now, and you don't even see it. It sounds exactly like you. It feels like your own voice. It tells you what to think, how to feel, what to do next. And because it feels so real, so familiar, you trust it without question. But here is the truth most people never realize. That voice in your head is not you. It is a pattern, a system, a stream of thoughts running on its own, repeating, reacting, deciding, long before you become aware of it. That's why you overthink without choosing to. That's why your emotions rise before you can stop them. That's why your attention keeps slipping, even when you try to focus. You think you are in control, but most of what you call yourself is happening automatically beneath your awareness. And until you see this clearly, you will keep living a life that feels like yours, but is quietly being controlled from the inside. So stay with me, because once you truly see what's happening in your mind, you won't just understand it. You'll finally start taking your life back. 1. The voice in your head is not who you are. There is a constant voice inside you that never truly stops, and it has been there for so long that you no longer notice it as something separate from you. You experience it as if it is your own identity speaking from within. From the moment you wake up, it begins quietly, reminding you of what you have to do, what you forgot yesterday, what might go wrong today. And as your day continues, it keeps commenting on everything you see, everything you feel, and everything you remember, giving opinions, making judgments, comparing your life to others, and creating a continuous stream of inner noise that feels completely normal to you. It tells you what is right and what is wrong. It tells you what you should do next. It tells you how people see you, how you should feel about yourself, and without even realizing it, you start trusting every word it says as if it is the ultimate truth about who you are and how life really is. You don't stop to question it because it sounds like you, it feels familiar, and it has been repeating itself for years, so it becomes your default way of seeing everything. But if you slow down for a moment and truly look at what is happening inside you, something very important begins to reveal itself. That voice is speaking constantly, but at the same time there is something else present, something silent that is listening to it. You can hear the thoughts, you can notice the words forming in your mind, you can observe the tone of that inner voice, and this means there are actually two things happening at once, one that is speaking and one that is aware of the speaking. And this is where the illusion begins to break, because the one who is listening cannot be the same as the one who is speaking. The voice changes. It becomes negative sometimes, positive at other times. It becomes anxious, then calm, then doubtful, then confident. It is always shifting, always reacting, always moving, but the awareness that hears it remains still, quiet, and unchanged in the background. That awareness is what you truly are, not the voice that keeps talking, but the mind is very subtle and very convincing. It doesn't just speak and disappear, it pulls you into what it says. It makes you believe every thought as if it is a fact, and over time you stop noticing that you are listening to thoughts and start believing that you are those thoughts. Instead of hearing a thought that says, "I am not good enough," you begin to feel like that is your reality. Instead of noticing fear as a passing experience, you begin to think, "I am a fearful person," and slowly, without realizing it, you build your entire identity around something that is constantly changing. This is how the mind takes control, not by force, but by making you forget the distance between you and it. It makes you identify so deeply with its voice that you lose the ability to observe it. And once that happens, every thought starts to feel like a command, every emotion starts to feel permanent, and every reaction starts to feel like it is coming from your true self. So instead of simply hearing a thought, you become the thought. Instead of watching an emotion, You get carried away by it, and instead of observing your inner world with clarity, you get lost inside it without even noticing that it is happening. And the moment you lose that small but powerful distance between awareness and thought, the mind no longer feels like something you experience. It begins to feel like something that defines you, and that is the moment when it stops guiding you and quietly starts controlling you without your awareness. 2. Your reactions were programmed long before this moment. You believe that when something happens in your life, you respond to it in that exact moment, as if your reaction is fresh, chosen, and completely under your control. But if you slow down and really observe what is happening inside you, you will begin to notice something deeper and more unsettling. Most of your reactions do not begin in the present moment. They come from a place much older, a place built from your past, your memories, your experiences, and the patterns your mind has repeated again and again until they became automatic. Think about the last time something small triggered you. Maybe someone ignored you. Maybe a message came late. Maybe someone said something in a tone you did not like, and instantly something rose inside you. It could have been irritation, anger, anxiety, or even overthinking that kept going long after the moment had passed. Now, ask yourself honestly, did you sit there and calmly choose that reaction, or did it appear on its own before you had any chance to stop it? What you will notice is that it did not feel like a choice. It felt immediate, almost like a reflex, something that happened faster than your awareness could catch. That is because your mind is not responding to what is happening right now. It is responding to what it already knows. Every reaction you have is shaped by everything you have lived through before, every hurt you experienced, every belief you formed about yourself, every situation that left a mark on your mind. All of it gets stored quietly and then used again and again without you realizing it. So when something happens in the present, your mind quickly scans its past, finds a similar pattern, and reacts based on that, not based on what is actually in front of you. This is why sometimes your reaction feels stronger than the situation itself, because you are not just reacting to this moment, you are reacting to many past moments at once, all layered together inside you. This is also why the same situations keep triggering you in the same way, why the same type of people affect you again and again, and why certain emotions feel so familiar no matter how much time passes. It is not because life is repeating itself, it is because your mind is repeating its patterns. And the more unconscious you are of these patterns, the more control they have over you, because now you are not responding to life with clarity, you are reacting from a script that was written long before this moment even arrived. This is how the illusion of control becomes stronger, because you feel like you are making decisions, but in reality, your mind is replaying old reactions, old fears, and old habits in new situations, and you simply follow along as if it is happening for the first time. But the truth is, until you become aware of these patterns, your reactions will keep coming from the past, and your present will never feel truly free. You will keep thinking you are choosing how to respond, while something deeper inside you is already deciding before you even realize what is happening. And the moment you begin to see this clearly, not just as an idea but as something real inside your own experience, you start to understand that real control is not about forcing different reactions. It begins with seeing that most of what you call your reaction was never fully yours to begin with. 3. Your attention is being hijacked every second. Your attention is the most valuable thing you have, because wherever your attention goes, your experience follows, and wherever your experience goes, your life slowly shapes itself around it. You may think that you decide what to focus on, that you are in control of where your mind goes and what it stays on, but if you look honestly at your own daily experience, you will begin to see a very different reality unfolding right in front of you. You sit down to focus on something important, maybe your work, maybe a conversation, maybe even a simple moment of rest, and within seconds, your attention starts to drift. A random thought appears, and suddenly you are no longer present where your body is. You are somewhere else in your mind, thinking about something that has nothing to do with the moment you are in. Then another thought comes, pulling you even further away, and before you realize it, minutes have passed, sometimes even longer, and you don't even remember when you lost focus. This is not something rare. This is happening almost all the time, so frequently that it feels normal. Your attention jumps from one thing to another, from one thought to another, from one worry to another, without any clear decision from you. You pick up your phone without thinking, you check something without needing to, you get pulled into ideas, memories, or fears that were never part of your intention, and it all happens so smoothly that you don't question it. What you begin to realize is that your attention is not being directed, it is being pulled. It is being hijacked by whatever is strongest in that moment, by whatever thought has the most emotional weight, by whatever fear or desire has the most energy behind it. Your mind throws something into your awareness, and instead of observing it, your attention follows it automatically, as if it has no choice. And the deeper you look, the more you start to see how powerful this is, because your life is not just what happens around you, your life is what you are aware of. If your attention is constantly being dragged into worries, then your life feels like worry. If your attention is trapped in the past, then your life feels like something that already happened. If your attention is lost in imagined futures, then your life becomes something that never even exists. This is how control is quietly taken away from you, not by force, but by distraction. Not by something obvious, but by something so subtle that you never notice it happening. You believe you are living your life, but in reality, your attention is being led from one place to another, and you are simply following along without awareness. And the most important part to understand is that wherever your attention goes, your energy goes with it. Your emotions, your focus, your decisions, all of it begins to follow the direction of your attention. So if your attention is not in your control, then slowly, your life is not in your control either. But the moment you begin to see this clearly, the moment you catch your attention drifting and recognize that it was pulled without your permission, something starts to shift. You begin to realize that control is not about forcing your attention to stay in one place. It begins with noticing when it is taken away. Because once you can see that your attention is being hijacked, even for a second, you are no longer completely lost in it. And in that small moment of awareness, you take the first step toward bringing your attention back, not by force, but by choice. And that is where real control quietly begins to return. 4. Your mind is creating pain that doesn't even exist. There is a kind of pain you feel that has no visible cause, no real event happening in front of you, and yet it feels heavy, real, and impossible to ignore. And if you look closely at these moments, you will begin to see something surprising. Most of the suffering you experience is not coming from what is happening right now. It is being created inside your own mind, quietly, continuously, without your awareness. You can be sitting in a safe place, nothing around you is threatening, nothing is going wrong in that exact moment, and still your mind begins to generate fear, worry, or sadness. It starts imagining what could go wrong in the future. It replays something that already happened in the past. It builds stories about what others might be thinking about you. And before you realize it, your body reacts as if all of it is actually happening in real time. Your heart starts to feel heavy, your chest tightens, your thoughts begin to race, and you feel overwhelmed, not because something real is happening outside, but because something imagined is happening inside. The mind does not need reality to create suffering. It only needs a thought that feels believable enough. And once you accept that thought without questioning it, your entire experience begins to change. This is how the mind quietly traps you. It creates a problem that does not exist in the present moment, and then it pulls you into trying to solve it, analyze it, and fix it. You start thinking about it again and again, searching for answers, trying to control outcomes that are not even real yet. And the more you engage with it, the more real it begins to feel. You begin to live in a world that only exists in your thoughts, a world filled with imagined fears, repeated regrets, and endless what-ifs. And over time, this becomes your normal way of experiencing life. Even when nothing is wrong, it feels like something is. Even when there is peace available in the present moment, your mind pulls you away from it and into something that only exists as a possibility or a memory. And the deeper you get caught in this, the harder it becomes to recognize what is real and what is not, because your mind is constantly feeding you stories that feel convincing. It tells you that you need to worry to stay prepared, that you need to think more to stay in control, that you need to revisit the past to understand it better. But in reality, it is just keeping you trapped in a cycle of unnecessary suffering. The truth is, most of the problems your mind creates never actually happen, and most of the pain you feel is not coming from reality, it is coming from your attachment to thoughts about reality. And as long as you believe every thought without questioning it, you will continue to experience emotions that have no real foundation in the present moment. But something powerful begins to change when you start noticing this pattern, when you catch your mind creating a story and realize that nothing is actually happening right now. There is no real danger, no real problem in front of you, only a thought that is trying to convince you that there is. In that moment, a small distance appears between you and the thought, and that distance is enough to weaken its power. You begin to see that you don't have to follow every thought. You don't have to solve every imagined problem, and you don't have to suffer for something that does not even exist. And when you truly understand this, not just as an idea but as a direct experience, you start to return to the present moment, where life is actually happening, where most of your pain disappears, not because you forced it to go away, but because you stopped feeding what was never real to begin with. 5. You're not thinking, you're being controlled by thoughts. There is something you have believed your entire life without ever questioning it, and that is the idea that you are the one thinking your thoughts. That every idea that appears in your mind is something you created, something you chose, something that belongs to you. It feels natural to assume this, because the thoughts sound like your voice, and they move so quickly that you never stop to examine where they are coming from. But if you slow down and observe carefully, a different truth begins to reveal itself. Thoughts do not wait for your permission. They appear on their own, one after another, sometimes calm, sometimes chaotic, sometimes helpful, sometimes completely unnecessary, and they keep coming even when you don't want them to. Try to sit in silence for a moment and stop thinking completely, and you will immediately notice how difficult it is, because thoughts continue to rise without asking you. This is the first sign that something deeper is happening. If you were truly in control of your thoughts, you would be able to start and stop them whenever you wanted. You would be able to choose only the thoughts that serve you and reject the ones that create stress or fear. But that is not how it works. Instead, thoughts appear automatically, and before you even realize it, they begin to shape how you feel and how you respond. One thought leads to another, and then another, creating a chain that pulls you deeper and deeper into a certain state. A small worry becomes a larger fear. A simple memory becomes regret. A single idea becomes overthinking that lasts for hours. And all of this happens without you deciding to go down that path. You are simply carried along by the movement of your own mind. This is where the illusion becomes powerful, because even though you are not choosing these thoughts, you are still believing them. You treat them as if they are facts, as if they define reality, and as if they represent who you are. So when a thought says something negative about you, you feel it deeply. When a thought imagines something going wrong, you react with fear. And when a thought repeats itself again and again, you start to feel trapped inside it. Over time, this creates a pattern where your thoughts begin to control your emotions begin to control your actions, and your actions begin to shape your life, all without you being fully aware of what is happening. You think you are making decisions, but in reality, your thoughts are guiding you in directions you never consciously chose. And the most subtle part of this control is that it feels like freedom. It feels like you are thinking, deciding, choosing, but in truth, you are following a stream that is already moving. You are not directing the flow, you are being carried by it. And because it feels so natural, you never question it. But the moment you begin to observe this process, everything starts to shift. You start to notice that thoughts are appearing, not being created, that they are moving, not being controlled, and that you have been identifying with something that is constantly changing. You begin to see that you are not the source of every thought, and that realization creates a small but powerful distance. In that distance, you are no longer completely controlled. You can see a thought without immediately believing it. You can feel an emotion without being consumed by it, and you can allow thoughts to pass without following them into deeper patterns. This does not mean the thoughts stop, but it means they no longer have the same power over you. And this is where real freedom begins. Not when you control every thought, but when you realize that you do not have to follow every thought. Because once you stop blindly believing everything that appears in your mind, you break the cycle of control, and you begin to experience life with a clarity that was always there, waiting behind the noise. 6. The you protect is just a mental illusion. There is an image of yourself that you carry everywhere, a quiet idea of who you are that feels solid, personal, and completely real. And without even noticing it, you spend most of your life protecting it, defending it, and shaping your choices around it as if it is something that must never be questioned. You call it your identity, your personality, your nature, and it feels like the most natural thing in the world to say, "This is just who I am." But if you slow down and look deeper into this you will begin to notice something unexpected. This identity did not appear on its own. It was built over time, layer by layer, through everything you have experienced, everything people have said to you, everything you repeated about yourself, and every situation that left a mark on your mind. It is a collection of memories, beliefs, reactions, and labels that were gathered slowly and then held together by your mind until they started to feel like a fixed truth. You learned what to like and what to dislike. You learned how to respond in certain situations. You learned what kind of person you think you are. And over time, all of this became a story that you now carry as your identity. But the important thing to see is that this story is not permanent, it is not unchangeable, and it is not something you were born with fully formed. It is something that was created, shaped, and reinforced again and again. And yet, even though it is built from changing pieces, you treat it as something solid. You protect it when someone challenges it. You feel hurt when it is questioned. You feel proud when it is validated. And slowly your entire emotional life becomes connected to maintaining this image of yourself. You begin to live in a way that keeps this identity safe, even if it limits your growth, even if it keeps you stuck in patterns that no longer serve you. This is where the mind takes control in a very subtle way. Because once you believe that this identity is who you truly are, every thought that supports it feels right, and every thought that challenges it feels uncomfortable. So the mind keeps feeding you ideas that strengthen this identity, repeating the same beliefs, the same fears, the same limitations, and you continue to act in ways that match the story you believe about yourself. For example, If your mind has built an identity that says you are not confident, it will keep showing you thoughts that confirm it. It will remind you of past moments where you felt unsure. It will create hesitation in situations where you could grow, and without realizing it, you keep living in a way that proves that identity to be true. Not because it is your true nature, but because your mind is maintaining a pattern it has become attached to. The same happens with every part of your identity, whether it is positive or negative, strong or weak, open or closed. All of it is shaped by repetition and reinforced by thought. And the more you believe it without questioning it, the more your life becomes limited by it. But the truth is, what you call you is not a fixed reality. It is a mental construction that is constantly changing beneath the surface. You are not the labels you have accepted. You are not the patterns you have repeated. And you are not the story your mind keeps telling about who you are. Those things exist, but they are not your true nature. The moment you begin to see this clearly, something powerful starts to shift. You start to notice how your mind is constantly trying to protect this identity, how it reacts when it feels threatened, how it repeats certain thoughts to keep the story alive. And, for the first time, you begin to see that you are not limited to this version of yourself. There is a deeper presence within you that is not defined by these patterns, something that exists before the labels, before the beliefs, before the story was even created. And when you connect with that, even slightly, you begin to feel a sense of freedom that was always hidden beneath the surface. Because once you realize that the you have been protecting is not as solid as it seemed, you no longer have to defend it so strongly, you no longer have to live inside its limits, and you no longer have to let your mind control you through it. Instead, you begin to step beyond it, not by forcing change, but by seeing clearly that you were never just that identity to begin with. 7. The moment you watch the mind, its power starts collapsing. There comes a moment, very small at first, almost easy to miss, where instead of being completely lost inside your thoughts, you begin to notice them. Not control them, not stop them, not change them, but simply notice that they are happening. And even though this sounds simple, this moment is where everything begins to shift in a way that most people never experience consciously. Until this point, your mind has been running automatically. Thoughts appear, you believe them, emotions rise, you react, and the cycle continues without interruption. You are inside the process, completely identified with it, moving with every thought as if it is your own voice guiding you. There is no space, no distance, no pause between what happens in your mind and how you respond to it. But the moment you begin to watch the mind, even for a second, something changes. You see a thought instead of becoming it. You notice an emotion instead of being fully carried away by it. You observe the reaction beginning instead of instantly acting on it. And in that simple act of watching, a gap appears between you and what is happening inside you. This gap is quiet, but it is powerful. Because for the first time, you are not completely inside the mind, you are aware of it. And awareness has a different quality than thought. Thoughts are fast, reactive, and constantly changing. But awareness is still, steady, and present. When awareness is there, even slightly, the mind no longer has the same level of control it had before. The mind depends on your unconsciousness. It needs you to believe every thought instantly, to follow every emotion without question, to react without seeing what is happening. But when you start watching, that automatic process begins to weaken. Thoughts still come, but they do not pull you as strongly. Emotions still rise, but they do not completely take over. Reactions still begin, but you start to see them before they fully form. This is why the power of the mind starts collapsing, not because you are fighting it, but because you are no longer feeding it with blind belief. When a thought appears and you simply observe it, it loses its ability to control your next move. When an emotion rises and you stay present with it instead of reacting immediately, it begins to settle on its own. When a pattern starts repeating and you recognize it, it cannot continue in the same unconscious way. At first, this may feel unfamiliar. You might still get pulled into thoughts. You might still react without noticing, and that is completely natural because these patterns have been running for a long time. But each time you become aware, even for a brief moment, you are breaking the cycle. You are stepping out of automatic behavior and into conscious presence. Over time, this awareness becomes stronger and more natural. You begin to catch thoughts earlier, you begin to feel emotions without being overwhelmed, and you begin to respond to life instead of reacting to it. The mind is still there, it still functions, it still produces thoughts, but it no longer controls you in the same way. And the most important part to understand is that this shift does not come from effort or force. It does not come from trying to stop thinking or trying to control every part of your mind. It comes from seeing clearly, from being present enough to notice what is happening without getting lost in it. Because the moment you truly watch the mind, you step into a different position, not as the one being controlled, but as the one who is aware. And from that place, the control the mind once had over you begins to fade, slowly at first, and then more deeply, until what once felt powerful and overwhelming becomes something you can simply observe without being pulled into it. 8. True control begins. The moment you stop trying to control, there is a strange pattern you may have noticed in your life. The more you try to control your mind, the more it seems to resist you. The more you try to force yourself to feel calm, the more restless you become, and the more you try to stop certain thoughts, the stronger and more persistent they appear. It feels frustrating because it seems like control should come from effort, from discipline, from pushing harder against what you don't want. But in the case of the mind, this approach quietly creates the opposite effect. Most people spend their lives trying to control every thought, every emotion, every reaction, believing that if they can just manage everything perfectly, they will finally feel peace. But what they don't realize is that this constant effort to control becomes another trap created by the mind itself. You are still inside the same system, still reacting, still struggling, just in a different way. When you try to control your thoughts, you are still giving them importance. When you fight an emotion, you are still feeding it energy. When you resist what is happening inside you, you create tension, and that tension keeps the mind active. So instead of finding freedom, you become even more entangled in the very thing you are trying to escape. This is why true control does not begin with force. It begins with understanding. It begins with seeing clearly how the mind works, how thoughts appear on their own, how emotions rise and fall, and how your reactions are often automatic. When you see this deeply, something inside you relaxes because you no longer feel the need to fight every experience. Instead of trying to stop a thought, you allow it to be there without immediately believing it. Instead of trying to push away an emotion, you let it rise and fall without resisting it. Instead of trying to control every reaction, you stay present enough to notice it before it fully takes over. And in this simple shift, control starts to return, not as force, but as clarity. It may feel like you are letting go of control, but what you are actually letting go of is the illusion of control, the constant struggle to manage something that was never meant to be forced into silence. And when that struggle fades, a different kind of control begins to appear, one that is quiet, steady, and natural. In this state, thoughts still come, but they do not pull you in the same way. Emotions still arise, but they pass more freely without overwhelming you. Situations still happen, but you respond with awareness instead of reacting automatically. You are no longer trying to dominate your mind. You are no longer trapped inside it. You are simply aware of it, and that awareness changes everything. This is what real control looks like. Not controlling every detail, but not being controlled by anything. It is the ability to stay present while your mind moves, to remain steady while thoughts and emotions come and go, and to act from clarity instead of from unconscious patterns. And once you experience this, even for a moment, you begin to understand something that cannot be explained only through words. You realize that peace was never something you had to create by force. It was something that was always there beneath the noise, waiting for you to stop fighting long enough to notice it. So the moment you stop trying to control everything, not out of weakness, but out of deep understanding, is the moment you step into a different way of living, one where your mind no longer controls your experience, and your life finally begins to move with a sense of freedom that feels real, grounded, and completely your own. And now, if you really look at everything you've just seen, something inside you should feel different. Not because your life suddenly changed, but because the way you see it is starting to change. For so long, you thought the problem was outside. You thought something in your life needed to be fixed. Someone needed to change. Something needed to go your way. But now, you can feel it. The real shift was never out there. It was always here, inside you, in the way your mind speaks, in the way you believe it without question, in the way it quietly takes control, while pretending to be you. And maybe for the first time, you are starting to see that voice. Instead of blindly following it, you are starting to notice the thoughts. Instead of becoming them, you are starting to feel the emotions without being completely pulled into them. And that small shift is not small at all, because that is where your freedom begins. Not when your thoughts disappear, not when your life becomes perfect, but the moment you are no longer completely controlled by what is happening inside you. There will still be noise. There will still be moments where you get pulled back in. There will still be days where the mind feels heavy. But now, something has changed. Now you know. Now you can see. And once you truly see it, you can never go back to being fully unconscious again. So the next time your mind starts pulling you, the next time a thought feels overwhelming, the next time you feel lost inside your own head, pause just for a moment and notice. Notice the thought. Notice the feeling. Notice the movement inside you, because in that moment, you are no longer trapped inside it. You are aware of it. And that awareness is the beginning of everything. This is how control returns, not by force, not by fighting, but by seeing clearly. And the day you truly learn to see your mind is the day your life stops being something that happens to you and finally becomes something you are present for. And maybe, for the first time in a long time, you won't feel like you're chasing control anymore. You'll feel something deeper, stillness, clarity, freedom, and you'll realize it was never about controlling your mind. It was about waking up from it.